A lot of French fries today. What? Oh, we're on? It started. Oh, sorry. Hey, welcome to Northshore. Good to see all of you with us in this room. We're glad that you're here. And for those of you who are joining us online, I'm so glad you're making some time on Super Bowl Sunday to be with us. It's a big day for a lot of people. It's also Groundhog Day, which is a big day for a lot less people. I know a lot of you will be watching the game today. Some of you are cheering for that one particular West Coast team today. Some of you are cheering against that one particular West Coast team today. I know, I hear you. But here's the thing. Everybody's welcome here at North Shore. Our executive pastor, Gary Lindsay, actually lived in Boston for a while, and he is a diehard Patriots fan. And so he told me that today he's going to wear a T-shirt that says, "The Patriots are still champions until 5 o'clock." And I want to say, you can't wear that. It's not appropriate. Don't wear that to church. But here's the thing. North Shore is a place where you can come as you are, and everybody's welcome. And Gary doesn't work here anymore, but you could come as you are, and everybody's welcome here. The other big news going on, at least in our family this week, is the due date for our baby boy is rapidly approaching. In fact, Nina could actually go into labor any day at any hour right now. So here's the thing. If my phone rings, I love you, but I'm leaving, okay? Just how it goes. No, thank you. And if the sermon's not going well, I might leave on that note as well. So if this is your first time here or your first time in a long time, we've been in this series called This Is Home, talking about the core values, the key principles and practices, the house rules, if you will, that define what matters most and then shape how we want to live our lives. And we've walked through a number so far, starting with we keep Jesus at the center. Not success or comfort or convenience or reputation or even rules at the center, which is so easy to do in church life, but always Jesus at the center of everything that we say and everything that we do. And then as a church, we are here for those who are not here. We're not here just for ourselves, to be a club, just to serve the needs of the people who may be in this room or following us online, but for those who don't know Jesus, who maybe not have no interest in church. And then we dream big and pray even bigger, that we serve a God who has big dreams for our world. And so our goals are not going to be built around what we can do. Our goals are going to be built around what He can do. And then last week we talked about this, that we lead the way with irrational generosity. And if you were here last week, we tried to just demonstrate this in kind of an irrational way. We actually gave you money. Some of you thinking, gosh, I picked the wrong weekend to try out church. It should have been last weekend. But here's the thing, it was just a reminder that every dollar we have actually belongs to God. And because God has been so irrationally generous with us, the only logical way to follow this God is to be irrationally generous with other people. But today, we're going to talk about a value that actually is the primary catalyst for your spiritual life. In fact, I would go so far as to say this about what we're talking about today. There is nothing in this life that will unleash more excitement about God, more joy in your heart, more strength in your soul, and more impact on the world than the value we're talking about today. Now, I know that's a bold claim, and I'm going to try my best to back this up to you today. But before I do that, there's one more bold claim I want to make about this value, that there is nothing in this life that will generate more resistance in your spirit, more excuses in your mind, more cost to your calendar, and more pain to your pride than the value we're talking about today. It's kind of a paradoxical thing. What we're looking at today is actually the most rewarding and the most resisted part of spiritual life, according to Jesus. And this is true regardless of whether you've been following Jesus for a long time, or maybe you're here and you're just trying to figure out who this Jesus is and does He matter to my life. But either way, this value is the most rewarding and the most resisted, and it has to do with something you were handed when you were walked in today with one of these. Anyone know what this is, by the way? I just demonstrated. It's a potato peeler or a vegetable peeler, right? It's not a trick question. How many of you have ever used one of these before? Show of hands. Yep, a fair number of you. How many of you have almost lopped off a finger trying to use one of these before? Yep. Some other hands would say it's a dangerous tool, so be careful. You have to sign a waiver when you leave because we handed you one of these. In the world of food preparation, here's the deal. This tool is kind of at the bottom rung of the food preparation ladder. If you're an executive chef, you're not doing this. You have a staff that uses one of these. If you're married, you're not doing this. You have a husband that uses one of these, right? No one argues about not getting to do this. No one goes to school to get better at using this. No one dedicates their life to be the very best person using this. I mean, think about it. Of all the different cooking competitions that are on TV or in the media today that feature things like cooking and grilling and decorating and shopping and baking and stuffing and all that stuff, there is still no competitive peeling show on TV, right? In fact, you can find all sorts of hacks online that can help you avoid having to use one of these, whether it's boiling first or slicing first or submersing first, because using this, it's boring, it's mundane, it's time-consuming, gets a little annoying, gets a little rote. And here's the thing. No one ever notices how you've done the job, really, right? No one actually praises your work with how well you peeled that vegetable. I mean, how many times have you heard someone say, you know, the filet was nice, but the peel on this russet was simply exquisite? I mean, no one says that. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody out there right now is developing genetically modified vegetables that can peel themselves so we never have to use one of these again. But there's another tool from the kitchen that I want to talk about today, and it's this one. Everyone know what this one is? It's a spoon. How many of you have used one of these before? Okay, most hands have gone. There's a few that didn't go up, so we could kind of talk about what that means later, I guess. In the world of food preparation, this is the goal, right? I mean, this is the end. You want to be holding one of these in your hands. When you go to a restaurant, you don't pay your money to use one of these. You pay good money to use one of these. When you go to that Super Bowl event today, you don't walk in hoping someone says, hey, you're going to need this. You walk in and hope they say, hey, sit down, relax, enjoy yourself. All you're going to need is something like this. In fact, because you see, this is enjoyable. This is pleasing. It's the payoff. And if I had to ask you which one of these tools would help you get the most out of your food experience, like would bring the best out of food in your life, I can almost guarantee every one of us would say this. Because the more you get to use this, the less you feel like you want to use this one. And the less you use this one in your life, the more entitled you feel to be holding something like this. Now, why am I sharing all this with you? Because there is a similar dynamic that can be at work in all of us in our spiritual lives. When I was growing up, there was a phrase that I would sometimes hear people in church say when they were going through a season where it felt like they weren't growing or they were frustrated or they felt far from God or they weren't being transformed. And the phrase was simply this. They would say, I'm just not getting fed. I'm just not getting fed. And maybe you've been around church and you've heard someone say this about their church or their spiritual life. Maybe you've said this before about your spiritual life. Maybe you're thinking it right now. This talk's just not doing it for you. So you're just thinking that right now. I'm just not getting fed. Now, on the one hand, these words reveal a really good desire, a desire to grow, a desire to deepen one's trust in and confidence in God. And there is no better longing. In fact, I hope when you leave today that you have a deeper longing and desire to trust God, know God, experience God in your life. There's no desire that's more important than that one. But these words, I'm just not getting fed, can also reveal an assumption in our lives that the main way to grow closer to God, or the main way to deepen your faith, or the main way to experience His power or presence in your life is to come to church holding, at least symbolically, holding one of these. Thinking to yourself, I'm here to get something out of the message. I'm here to get something out of the music. I'm here to get something from my life group. I'm here to get something from my community. I want to enjoy it. I want to feel good. And I want to go home feeling satisfied, like it was worth my time. Now, here's the thing. I'm not pointing a finger at anybody in this room around this because we are all tempted to think this way about all of life. In fact, we live in a culture that invites us, almost programs us to be thinking this way about life. I mean, think about it. In every commercial you see, every ad in your Instagram feed, every billboard along the road, the message is all the same. The message is this: you are a consumer. That's what you are. Fundamentally, you are a consumer. And here's the thing. If you're a consumer, then life is about consuming products, experiences, and services that promise to satisfy an appetite or fulfill a desire. And we all know this is true because, again, in all the ads we see and all the marketing in our world, it's the same message. If you consume this or experience this or if you have this service, it will satisfy that appetite. It will fulfill that longing. And you'll go home feeling full and satisfied. And then think about it. What this means is in those moments in life when we're not happy, In those moments in life when we're not satisfied, in those moments in life when we feel something missing or is wrong, we go to this place and we say, gosh, the products, experiences, and services that I'm receiving must not be working anymore, right? And therefore, if I want to feel full or satisfied, I need buy a new product, or I need a better experience, or I need a new kind of service in my life, just to make sure that I do okay. And here's the thing, this kind of thinking is so pervasive in our day, it actually has moved into the sphere of relationships. I mean, think about it. Many relationships today are no longer commitment-based, they're actually consumer-based, meaning we only stay in them, we only feel committed as long as they're meeting our needs. But somehow, if a relationship or friendship or even marriage, if it demands more from me than I'm getting out of it, that must mean something's wrong, and maybe it's even time to move on. Sociologists actually have a name for this. They're calling it the commodification of relationships in our day. It's a real thing. And here's the deal. This same dynamic, this same pattern, this same posture can exist in our spiritual lives. And we've probably all been there. You've probably been in a place like this where you're thinking, if I feel stuck spiritually, if I don't feel close to God right now, if I don't feel like I'm growing or being encouraged or energized, it must mean I'm just not getting fed. I'm not getting the right products or experiences or services. So, and then people will say things like this, I'll go find a new church. And sometimes they'll go from church to church to church, trying to find what's going to feed and fill them up. Or they'll go, I'll find a new life group or a new community group or a new ministry to be in, trying to be filled up. Or in some extreme cases, and this is happening more and more in our day, people will say, I'll just find a new faith. I'll find a whole new belief system, something that's built around meeting my needs, at least at this time. And when this belief system wears out on me, I can find a new one that meets my needs next time around. It is the commodification of our spiritual lives, and we are all living in a world that is blaring that message at you over and over and over. Now, here's the deal. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be discerning about the teaching that you hear or the community that you're part of. But here's the thing. When Jesus talked about how to deepen your faith, when Jesus talked about how to grow in your knowledge of God, when he talked about how to experience the power and presence of God, he didn't say you're going to need to use one of these. He said you're going to need to pick up and use one of these. And for the rest of my time with you, I want to tell you a story that I think will illustrate what this looks like and what it means for you and for me. On the night before Jesus was arrested and eventually crucified, he was celebrating the Passover meal with his disciples, their final meal together. And after the meal, they're sitting around, they're having conversation. It's kind of an intense time. And this one argument breaks out. Take a look at what they talk about. This again, the night before Jesus is arrested, a dispute also arose among the disciples as to which of them was considered to be the greatest. I mean, think about that. Jesus has passed the bread. He's passed the wine. It's his last night. And this is the argument that breaks out. Like right here, like, who's the best of us? But what's so ironic about this is this wasn't the first time they'd had this particular discussion. There's a story when the disciples were traveling with Jesus to a town called Capernaum. And along the way, they're having this conversation. Who's the greatest? Who's the best? Who's the most important? And when they get there, Jesus turns and asks them, what were you arguing about? And they're so ashamed, they're so embarrassed, they don't even say anything. They're just silent. They can't answer the question. Another time, they're traveling with Jesus to the city of Jerusalem, and two of the disciples who were brothers, James and John, came to Jesus and said, we want to sit at your right and your left in your kingdom, which was like saying, we think we deserve the highest level of status and dignity and honor right next to you. I mean, that's like saying we don't want economy plus or even business class seats. We want the whole first class, fold into a king-size bed, serve me my food kind of seats at the table. And get this is so interesting. In Matthew's version of this story, it's not James and John, it's actually their mom who comes and asks Jesus to do this for them. I mean, just imagine that moment. I mean, these two adult men standing there awkwardly, kind of looking at the ground, maybe scratching their head, certainly no eye contact with Jesus, as their mom goes to Jesus and says, don't you think my Jamie and Johnny should be your number one and number two? I mean, have you seen their discipleship aptitude scores? I mean, they're just so gifted. They're so special. I mean, it's kind of funny. In that culture, parents would actually seek personal fulfillment through the achievement of their kids. I mean, can you imagine living in a world like that? I mean, it's just crazy to think that way. Which one of us is the greatest? Who gets the best seat? Who's going to receive the highest reward? Who is going to get the most out of this whole thing? That's what we want to know. Who's going to get the most out of it? And so Jesus says to them, the kings of the Gentiles lord it over them, that authority or power. And those who exercise authority over them call themselves benefactors. In other words, in that day, if someone who was considered or thought themselves to be great had power or wealth or influence, they had a really important seat at the table. That's what it meant to be great. That's what it meant to have status. And then Jesus says this, but you are not to be like that. And these words, there are few more radical, more revolutionary, more controversial words in that day, but you are not to think that way. Instead, the greatest among you should be like the youngest. And by the way, this word youngest does not refer to youngest in age, but lowest in status. The greatest among you should be like the lowest in status, and the one who rules should be like the one who serves. It's a remarkable statement. And Jesus goes on, for who is greater, he asks, the one who is at the table with the spoon or the one who serves the table with the peeler in hand? Is it not the one who's at the table? In other words, that's what you think, right? It's got to be the one who's sitting there. It's got to be the one who's receiving. It's got to be the one who is at the place of honor at the table. And then he says the most, again, remarkable words, but I am among you as one who serves. Jesus is saying greatness is not achieved by being the person who is at the table. Greatness will be achieved by being the person who is serving the table. And again, you may have been in church a long time. Maybe you've seen scriptures like this in the Bible, so this sounds rather familiar to you. But I have to tell you, no one in human history had ever said or thought something like this. In fact, in that day, to suggest that a person should aspire to serve or to see others succeed first or to willingly give up status or power or influence for the sake of somebody else, that was considered lunacy or stupidity or just both. In fact, just to prove it to you, there's a first century Roman historian named Pliny who once said this. He said, it is more uglifying to lose praise to go down or to serve or to lose status than to have never been praised at all. This is a day where the whole goal of life was to climb up one rung on the ladder, one to the next to the next. And we know this too in our day, don't we? The whole purpose of life is how do I get from this income bracket to the next? How do I get from this social circle to the next? How do I get from this job title to the next? And if you can't go up, at least in that day, you never want to go down. I mean, that was like the cardinal sin in that world. Make sure you never even appear to lose power or status or identity. Even if you're the last person at the table, make sure you're holding one of these. Make sure you're never seen holding one of these. And that's just how everybody thought. That's how the world worked. And in a way, I would say it's how our world still works today. Until a carpenter from Nazareth named Jesus said, no. You've all got it upside down. If you want to be great, serve. If you want to be first, let others get there before you. If you want to be truly successful, be willing to fail to see others actually succeed. If you want to grow deeper in your faith and more confident in God, I'm going to tell you something quite radical. You don't need to pick up one of these. You need to pick up one of these and arrange your life around ordinary, mundane, nobody notices. You're never the hero kind of serving. Not the one sitting at the table, the one serving the table. Now, most of us are thinking somewhere inside, because I thought this way about this can't actually be true. I mean, this can't actually work. But it's interesting, current research, even in our day, around spiritual growth and what causes people to grow spiritually actually points back to the truth around this. Just an illustration of this. A few years ago, there was a national survey of over 1,000 churches called the Reveal Study. You can look it up online. And this was all about finding out what actually helps people grow spiritually. And based on all the questions and data they found, they kind of categorized people into these 4 categories. Exploring Christ, so exploring, seeking, not sure, investigating, just curious. Growing in Christ, someone who's just found him and maybe is just starting to grow. Close to Christ, meaning he's becoming close to my heart. My life is more and more oriented around him. And then finally, Christ-centered. Everything around my life is built around this person of Jesus. And they went around and they asked people all these questions about their beliefs, their values, their practices, the way they live their life, to try to find out, and maybe you've thought about this in your life, how do you move from here to here? Or how do you move from here to here? Or how do you move from here to here? Maybe you've been in a place thinking this way about your life. I mean, maybe you're thinking, gosh, I feel close to Christ. I've never actually felt like here. How do I move from one to the next? And what they discovered a number of things from this research. But two of the most striking discoveries are just remarkable. One was that they actually found that for people that would, say, attend certain events, classes, worship services, events in a church, they tend to be effective for people exploring faith or early on in their faith, but as you grow, as you mature, they become increasingly or decreasingly effective over time. Decreasingly effective. What that means is, over time, no matter how, who's preaching or leading, no matter what kind of music or teaching, you'll stop growing if you just attend. You'll stop growing if you're just attending. That's what the research says. But perhaps the most profound discovery of all of this research was that at every stage, in all categories, even if you didn't know God, all the way to having a life centered around God, serving was catalytic at every stage. In other words, serving, just being willing to serve, made a spiritual impact no matter what your stage of faith, whether you were just trying to figure things out or you were close to God. When you serve, you grow. When you serve, you actually experience God. When you serve, it's so cool. When you serve, you get fed. And I got to tell you, I hear stories that prove this around here all the time from many of you. People who are investing in kids week after week after week. People who are serving people in crisis and no one ever hears the stories. Or people who are facilitating tables at Alpha or leading life groups in their homes. They're not doing stuff that looks on the outside that heroic, or they're not doing stuff that necessarily feels convenient. They're simply arranging their life around one of these. Even if it's boring, even if nobody notices, even if they feel like they're just giving and giving and giving. But here's what they tell me, and this is, I don't think they're lying, but here's what they'll tell me. It's not just like I feel like I'm making a difference. They'll say these strange things like, I feel like I'm receiving more than I'm giving. I feel like I'm being fed. I feel like I'm being fed. And they are, because serving is the most spiritually rewarding way you can live your life. But what's interesting is that doesn't mean our first instinct is going to be to do it, right? I mean, it's easy to talk about serving. It's easy to read about serving. It's easy to hear stories and feel inspired by people who've been serving. What's not so easy? Just actually serving, right? In fact, I have a good friend who would say it this way. He would say, I'm for serving in every way except when it comes to actually serving. And we all chuckle, I do too, but this is so true for so many of us. Why? Because serving is costly. Serving is time-consuming. Serving doesn't build up your resume. Serving doesn't generate new resources. Serving, it's not about praise or recognition at all. In fact, one of the temptations for many people, and I've experienced this in my life, especially early on in faith, is to think of serving as kind of a way to be the hero. And I've had this thought in my life, and maybe you have, where it's like, I'm going to serve, and I sure hope somebody notices. I sure hope they say, great job, way to go. I sure hope I get to be the hero of the story. What a great servant you are, Scotty. In fact, sometimes Nina will come home, and I'll find myself saying these things like, honey, look what I did. I cleaned the bathroom. Or I vacuumed the kitchen. Let's take a video. Let's make an Insta story. Let's tell the world what a great servant I am. And clearly I have a long way to go spiritually, right? As inspiring as it can be to think about serving, we resist it. Why? Because here's the thing. There is no way to be a hero using this. There's no way to make your name great using this. There's no way to impress anybody using this. You simply have to trust that if God came into the world not to be served but to serve, that means maybe the life that you're shopping for or spending for or waiting for or just attending for is actually waiting for you in building your life around one of these. Maybe this is actually finally your answer. Which is why our next house rule is simply this: we are contributors, not consumers. We want to be contributors, not consumers. We don't want to come to church thinking, what's in it for me? What can I get out of it? But we want to think, what can I pour into it? What can I invest? What can I give? What can I do to help the mission move forward? Sometimes I hear people say, North Shore is kind of a large church, and we may not have enough, slots for everybody to serve. Well, I just talked to our staff this week, and they assured me there is not a ministry in this church that has run out of opportunities to serve, not one. Sometimes people will think when we talk about serving, there's a lot of kind of misconception about this, that we talk about it, it's just because we want something from you. Like if we could just take your time and your energy and your resources just so we can keep running our business, that'd be a really good thing. No. We invite you to do this because of what we want for you. Because God says the best life, the real life, the full life, the satisfied life comes not when you're waiting to be served, but when you're serving, even if it's a simple task, even if it's just a mundane job. And when people come to our church, here's the thing. We want them to experience not just great teaching or music or kids programs or stuff like that. We want them to experience and walk away thinking, what remarkable servanthood. So that even if they're not ready to believe what we believe, they're seeing a really clear picture of Jesus through how we serve. And what's so cool is this way of life, if you commit to this way of life, it begins to spill over into other parts of your life and bless relationships and work and other parts of your life. As I said, Nina and I are scheduled to have our second child this week, and so this is the last time you're going to see me well-rested for about a year, okay? So this is it. And I was talking to a friend recently whose friends are grown up about just his learnings, what he learned from his days of raising little ones. And the one thing he talked about over and over was how long it took him to realize the sheer power of just serving when it comes to relationships and family. The sheer power of just serving. He told me that one time his wife said, when I see you vacuuming, I just feel cared for. Or when I see you doing the dishes, I actually feel kind of romantic towards you. Or when I see you bathing the kids, I feel real desire for you. And my friend said he started bathing those kids like 3 or 4 or 5 times a day. Just get in the bath, get out of bed, we're bathing again, right? The point is, there are few things that will strengthen a marriage or relationship more than just serving, not thinking, what do I get out of this, but what can I give to this? And the same is true when it comes to our work. Kind of a cool illustration of this. One of our production volunteers is an amazing guy named Ryan. And Ryan joined the production and lighting team with almost no experience in doing that, but he had a heart to serve, a willingness to learn. He spent hours and hours and hours just learning and growing and practicing and designing because his goal every Sunday is to give you a great experience every Sunday. That's his heart when he shows up here. And he never asks for credit, doesn't want to be the hero, just shows up every week ready to serve. But what's so cool is this heart, this attitude, has kind of infected his whole life and his work life. This past fall, we had our 50th anniversary, as many of you know, and Ryan actually got a call that day saying the power's down at a certain client for his company, and they asked him to go out and take care of it, which meant he had to miss the 50th anniversary, something he was really looking forward to being part of. But here's the thing, didn't complain, didn't have a bad attitude about it. He just went and took care of it. He just served. And here's what's so cool about this story. When his company found out that he missed this 50th anniversary, something he was really looking forward to, they actually wrote a letter to Northshore, to the church, to let us know how blessed they feel to have a guy like Ryan as part of their team. And they said this, get this, these are their words. Once we learned how much the anniversary meant to Ryan, it only felt right to donate the money we received from that customer to the church. This is a true story. They actually sent a check for $600 because the guy who does lights in here is serving his company by keeping lights on out there, and that company's now donating money to keep lights on in here. It's crazy, right? It's just the power of what happens when people serve. All because a human being decided, I am not going to arrange my life around this. I'm going to resist every message from our culture, and I'm going to say, no, I'm going to arrange my life around one of these, even if nobody ever knows. So what's your next step? It should be really obvious. Serve. Find a place to serve. And if you're serving and you feel kind of maybe you're not feeling fed or burned out, talk to the leader who you're working with because they can partner with you and help you in that. But here's what I want to say. I know as a leader, I've always got a lot more that I can learn and get better at. I know as a church there's a lot more that we can improve and get better as a church. But here's the deal. No matter how well I preach, no matter how competent our staff is, or how well organized our programs may be, you will have a hard time feeling at home here if your primary concern is just, I want to get fed. It's going to be hard. Now, that doesn't mean I don't want you to grow. I want you to grow. I want you to know Scripture. I want you to fall so in love with God that you are fully devoted to Him in every part of your life, which is why you were handed one of these. Because this is how you grow, and this is how you find joy, and this is how you experience the power of the transcendent, eternal God in your life. This is how you make a difference. And I want you to hear these words. These are the words of Jesus. For even the Son of Man, God Himself, did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give His life a ransom for many. And this, my friends, is at the very heart, the very core of everything we believe and everything we do and all we're about. We are contributors, not consumers. Why? Because our God is. And we want to be just like that. So here's what we're going to do. This is how we're going to close today. There is in the seat in front of you, there's a Connect card, or behind you if you're in one of the first row. When you pull that Connect card out right now, everybody pull it out. We're all going to do this together. So pull that out. There's also a pen that should be there as well, so you should have both a card and a pen in your hand. If you're online, there should be a way to link to that Connect card as well. And here's what I want you to do. We're all going to do this, so everybody's writing, okay? I want you to write your name and your email, and then you're going to have 3 options, all right? Write your name, email, or phone number, some way we can reach back out to you. And then here are your 3 options. You can first check the box on the front of that card that says, I want to volunteer. Now, that doesn't commit you to anything. It just means we want to reach out to you in the next 24 hours and say, hey, what's that about? Can we talk to you, have a conversation? No pressure, no obligation. If you're already serving, just write the name of the ministry where you serve. Kids, students, groups, wherever you're serving, just write that down. We'd love to reach out and just say thank you and yay you for making this part of your life. And then third, if you're not ready, if you're just not ready, if you're a guest, you're not sure what's going on here, just say not ready. We'll honor that, but I want this to be your commitment. You're either serving, you're already serving, or if you're not ready, that's your choice. It's okay, but we want to make sure everybody's writing something. And in a moment when the buckets go around, we're all going to put these cards in as a way of saying we're taking a step towards serving. We're taking a step towards contributing today. So I'm going to go ahead and invite the offering team forward so those buckets go around. This is a time where we also give. If you're here to give today, we're so grateful for that. No pressure to give financially. But here's the thing. We want every card to go in one of those buckets. So as the team goes forward, here's the deal. We are all going to make a commitment to serve. So are you ready? 1, 2, 3. It's your serve.